Okay, welcome back to Biology 1110. We are in the middle of talking about Chapter 1, so make sure that you have covered the Part 1 video. And in that video, we ended by talking about how things interact with other things in their environment. At a cellular level, we see a lot of interactions going on also. Molecules are interacting within your own body. You have interactions between different components of your body, different organs. So, your stomach and your intestines and your pancreas are all working together in the process of digesting your food. Cells are working together. The cells of your heart are working together to beat. And molecules within your cells are working in concert. And their ability to work together is able to keep organisms functioning, to keep our bodies operating smoothly. Cells are able to coordinate various chemical pathways through a mechanism called feedback. So one example of feedback would be negative feedback, and one would be positive feedback. Here in this picture, you have an example of negative feedback. You start with you have just eaten something with some sugar in it, and now you have a high blood glucose level. A healthy body will recognize that high blood glucose level, and in response, the pancreas will start producing insulin. Insulin will be released by certain insulin producing cells. That insulin will circulate through your body, and it will stimulate your liver and muscle cells to uptake the glucose. So your liver and muscle cells will take the glucose out of your blood circulation and store it. And they will store it until they get a signal that blood glucose is low and release it again. So in response to the liver and muscle cells taking up the liver and blood, in response to the liver and muscle cells taking up the blood glucose, you have now reduced the glucose flowing through your blood. So that is negative feedback. You have stopped that stimulus of a high blood glucose level. Now you've returned it to its normal levels. In feedback regulation, the output or product of a process regulates that process. So we saw high sugar stimulated the production of insulin, which in turn regulated the level of sugar in your body, in your blood. The most common form of regulation in living organisms is going to be negative feedback, where the response reduces the initial stimulus. So your body says, hey, I need to make something. You start making it. And then you build up a lot of it, and it says, I don't need to make that anymore. That's negative feedback. Controlling your body from making things in greater amounts than your body needs. Feedback is a regulatory motif common to life at all levels. So we will see feedback as a way to regulate the functions at all levels of life, from cells up to more ecological levels.
This simple animation illustrates the principle of negative feedback, or feedback inhibition, in the regulation of a chemical reaction sequence in a cell. The sequence involves 4 molecules, A, B, C, and D. 3 different enzymes catalyze the conversion of one molecule to the next. The final product, D, inhibits the first enzyme in the sequence. When the concentration of D rises to a certain point, the reaction shuts itself down.
Okay, so that's negative feedback.
In positive feedback, a product of the reaction sequence enhances the action of one of the enzymes, increasing the rate of production of the product. Positive feedback is less common than negative feedback in living systems.
Okay, so Z then is going to increase the production, increase the ability to have more of this end molecule Z laying around. That's positive feedback. And next, let's talk about evolution again. Evolution sometimes can be a hot button topic, but it is a critical concept to understand in the concept of science, especially in biology. So we're going to talk about this just at an introductory level so that you can understand the concept. If you think of a seahorse, a jackrabbit, and a bird, these are three animals that look drastically different. But if you were actually to analyze their skeletons and their anatomy, you would see they were arranged in very common ways. They have very common skeleton bone patterns, and these shared common traits point to a shared common ancestry for these animals. So they are descended from a common ancestor. They didn't descend from each other, right? They are all like cousins on the evolutionary tree, descended from a common ancestor many millions of years ago. This common ancestor is like a prototype. So all animals have descended from this original animal prototype ancestor. Even further back than that, all eukaryotes have a common eukaryotic ancestor. And further back than that, all life has a common ancestor. All life on Earth are modified descendants of common ancestors. Because we all are descendants of this common ancestor, we have many things in common. But because as we have descended, we have modified and become more, we have selected traits that are more advantageous to our different areas where we live. We have developed different modifications. So we also have differences between our different organisms. There's a lot of support for this concept of evolution through the fossil record, through genetics, and also other evidence as we talk about biology in general. When we group species, this concept of grouping species deals with taxonomy. Taxonomy is a branch of biology that names and classifies species into groups of increasing breadth. So we start with the species. Here we're talking about a black bear, Ursus americanus. The species means only that species of bear, only black bears. Then the genus opens up to some more closely related animals. So in the genus Ursus, we not only have black bears, we also have polar bears and brown bears. Then the family Ursidae opens up a little bit wider. We have a few more animals, including like pandas. Then order goes to all the carnivores. So the order that includes Ursus americanus includes all the carnivores. So now we're dealing with, all the wolves and dogs. Then we open up to class. Class is a little bit larger. And this class that involves black bears are the mammals. Mammals are animals that have fur and feed their young milk. Then this class of mammalia are within the chordate the phylum. The chordata are any animals that have a backbone. So it's not only the mammals, but now we're looking at amphibians, reptiles, fish, and birds. The phylum Chordata is within the kingdom Animalia, or animals, which is not only the animals with backbones, but also animals without, like insects and echinoderms. And then within that, the kingdom of animals are in the domain of eukarya. This would be all organisms whose cells have a nucleus. So species is the most specific, going all the way to domain. And at every level, as we go up a level, you have a more distant common ancestor. But all eukaryotes have descended from a very distant common ancestor. All Ursus the genus of Ursus, have all descended from a more recent common ancestor. When we name species, each species has a scientific name. And these scientific names are standard names used for each organism. No matter what country you're in, no matter what language it is, the scientific name is the same worldwide. Each scientific name has two parts. Because it has two parts, sometimes it's called binomial or two-named nomenclature. So two names, binomial nomenclature. The two names include the genus and the species. The genus is always capitalized. So if we go back a page, you see Ursus americanus. Ursus is capitalized. If we are talking about the salamander is in the genus of Ambystoma, and so Ambystoma is capitalized. The species is a second name. The species often is called a specific epithet, and this is always lowercase. In the example of the salamander, the species is maculatum, which is lowercase. Go back a page. Ursus americanus, the specific epithet is americanus. That is not capitalized. And then the entire name is going to be either italicized or underlined. If you are typing it, I prefer that you italicize it. But if you're handwriting it, you can't really italicize well. That doesn't come across in handwriting well. So you underline it. You underline both the genus and the species. So here, Ambystoma maculatum, Ambystoma capitalized, maculatum lowercase, both names either italicized or underlined. Back this previous page, Ursus americanus. Ursus is the genus, it's capitalized. Americanus is the specific epithet, it is lowercase, and both words are italicized. Make sure that you can tell how, if you are writing something in a lab report, you're able to use proper nomenclature in it. And if I give you a question asking you which of these species is written in proper nomenclature, you can make sure and be able to tell. Life is divided into 3 domains. We already said we have prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Our prokaryotes are divided into 2 domains. One is bacteria and one is archaea. 20 or 30 years ago, these were all both grouped together because they were, prokaryotic, single-celled things. But the more that we've learned about genetics, the more we have learned that these 2 domains are very different. Archaea is almost like, has almost as many things in common with eukaryotes as they do with bacteria, although they are both prokaryotic. So bacteria and archaea are our prokaryotic domains. Eukaryote domain includes all eukaryotic organisms. It includes the kingdom Plantae, which are the plants. Plants are identified as being multicellular organisms that can produce their own food by photosynthesis. They take energy from the sun and use that energy to capture carbon dioxide in the environment, and they convert that carbon dioxide into sugar, to glucose, which is their food. Fungi, which would include mushrooms, molds, yeast, mildews. Fungi do not do photosynthesis. Mushrooms are not photosynthetic. All fungi have to absorb nutrients. So you often see them where other matter is decaying. They're able to draw nutrients out of decaying and nutrients that are from decayed organisms. And then animals, which ingest their food, also multicellular, and we eat. We get our energy and our the stuff that our bodies are made of, the carbon, from the things that we eat. There is another kingdom within the eukarya that are called the protists. The protists have been grouped together into one kingdom, although there's a lot of debate into splitting them into several kingdoms. That's kind of an ongoing hot topic within the nomenclature and taxonomy worlds right now. Through life, we did say that we have unity and diversity. There is a striking unity in the diversity of life. So if you look at something like a paramecium, which would be a type of protist, some paramecia are covered with cilia. Cilia are these hair-like things in this top picture here. These little hair-like appendages on it that kind of are able to move, and as the cilia move, it allows the paramecium to move. We also have cilia on your windpipe cells. So the cells that line your respiratory system, going down from your mouth, your nose, down into your body to your lungs, they're coated with cilia. The cilia on your windpipe cells don't help your windpipe cells to move. Instead, as they beat, they help trap, dust or other particles that you don't want to be inhaling and getting into your lungs. Although these are on very different cells that have very different purposes, the cilia on both types of cells are very similar. We also see DNA in all living organisms. All living organisms have DNA as their universal genetic language. It includes the same bases, A, C, T, and G, in all organisms, whether you're a bacteria or a mushroom or a plant or a person. There's unity in a lot of features of cell structures. There's a unity through a lot of the ways that our cells work, even if we're very diverse seeming species. So this suggests there's descent with modification from a common ancestor. There's also fossils and other evidence that document the evolution of life on Earth over the billions of years that we have had life on Earth. Charles Darwin originally published on the origin of species by means of natural selection in 1959, and in this book he made two main points. One is that living species arise from ancestors that are different from them. So humans arose from ancestors that were different from humans. That is descent with modification. And natural selection is the mechanism behind descent with modification. I posted a video from the Amoeba Sisters that discusses natural selection within the Chapter 1 materials. So make sure you watch that. And if that still doesn't kind of help you understand this concept, you can look up Amoeba Sisters has a whole playlist of evolution-related videos that shows you, beyond just natural selection, how actual speciation, forming new species, takes place. We're not going to get that deep into class, but if that's something you're interested in understanding, a lot of you probably haven't had the chance to learn a lot about evolution through schooling so far, and so those are some nice references for you. Darwin's theory explains both the duality of unity and diversity. Unity because we are all related, and diversity because we have had random changes in our different species and we've adapted to our different environments. So Darwin noted some important things that allow natural selection to occur. One is that a population possesses heritable variations. So some organisms within a species, within a population, will have thicker fur or thinner fur. They'll be able to digest or not digest similar or different materials. They'll be able to run faster, or they'll be able to camouflage with their environment. There's just different variations within a species. There's also more individuals produced each generation than the population can support. So there are more children within your average animal species, more little baby plants within your average plant species that are going to be able to develop into adults of that species. So there's competition, both competition to be able to find resources, your own food and your own resources to survive and thrive, and also competition to not be the one that predators catch. And some variations within that population will give you an advantage. So some organisms are able to camouflage with their environment and not be caught by predators. Some organisms are going to have warmer fur that lets them survive better through the winter in a cold climate. Or maybe that thicker fur is less of an advantage in a warmer climate. So some variations are adaptive and give you a survival advantage, while some variations are not going to give you that advantage. The individuals that are best suited to the environment are going to be most likely to survive and reproduce. And those genes are going to be passed on to their children as they're reproducing. So over time, over many, many generations, you'll start to see a trend of more individuals in a population that have advantageous traits. Eventually, over enough generations, your population will eventually have trend towards that advantageous trait. And evolution will occur as the unequal reproductive success of individuals allows individuals with the better suited traits to survive, and the individuals with traits that don't give them that advantage will not survive and pass on their traits. So the environment selects for the propagation of beneficial traits, and this is what natural selection is. So here in this picture, there's a population of beetles that have a variation in their shell color. As a predator comes along, it's able to see the brighter colors better and will capture those brighter colored beetles to eat. That leaves the darker colored insects behind, and the darker colored insects are what will be able to breed and reproduce to create little baby bugs that have darker shells. And so you have an increased frequency of traits that enhance survival. The next generation, you'll probably see there's still a little bit of variation. Those lighter bugs are going to survive. Those lighter bugs, are going to be more likely to be eaten. So the trend towards shell color is that those bugs will get darker and darker over time. In a different environment, perhaps the lighter colored shells would have the advantage. And so you might see, if it's a beach where there's a lot of lighter colored sand that the bugs are burrowing through, you might see a different type of species evolve in a different environment compared to this darker environment. So you have a population of organisms that both have hereditary variations and an overproduction of offspring and competition that then play into the environment. Different environmental factors will allow differences in reproductive success of different individuals. And over generations, you'll see evolution of adaptations in the population. Evolution is not something that happens in one generation. It's not something that happens in one person. It's not even going to be something that you see in a couple of generations. You might see micro adaptations within, several generations, but we're talking like many generations. So you're not typically going to over one lifetime see natural selection. This is something that has happened over the course of the earth. Another thing suggesting our common descent from a common ancestor is homology. So the wings of a bat, the wings of a bird, the forelimbs of a dog or a cat, the flippers of a whale, they all look very different. They perform different functions, but although they are different features with different functions, they all have the same bones arranged in the same way. They have that common anatomy to them. Even if that anatomy has been adapted for different uses, that common anatomy is still there. That's what homology is. Homology is shared ancestry between a pair of structures or genes in different taxa. This reflects the inheritance of structures from a common ancestor. So a bat with its wings has homology to a dolphin or a whale with its front flippers. A bat wing and a butterfly wing do not have homology because they don't have the same anatomical structure, okay? We're not talking about the same usage. We're not talking about the same appearance. We're talking about the same, core anatomy to it. The tree of life. We're going to talk about the tree of life in the next picture. The unity in diversity arises from this descent with modification. So the tree of life is going to show how we have descended and how we have had modifications since then. Fossils also provide additional evidence of anatomical unity, so we can see kind of what our ancestral species were like, and we can get some descent with modification. So when Darwin was in the Galapagos Islands, there were several different islands just outside of the continent of South America, and each different island, they had slightly different insects or rocks or bugs or plants there. And he noticed on each different island, there was a slightly different type of finch. They had over generations become selected for whichever finch had the beak type to eat the food that was available on that island. But they all had a lot of similarities too. So there is this common ancestor of a finch. I wish I could use my pointer. Okay. So there's this common ancestor of a finch on the left side of the tree that eventually is going to branch out into all the different species that they see on the different islands today. And the closer that the things branch, the more recently they were related to each other. So this common ancestor eventually branched out into insect eaters and seed eaters. And then within this, eventually if we go down to the bottom, the seed eaters are branching into the cactus flower eaters and the other types of flower eaters. And these cactus flower eaters branch then into large cactus ground finch and the cactus ground finch. So these two the large cactus groundfinch and the cactus groundfinch, you can see branch more recently. They are more closely related to each other as compared to like the green warbler finch, where you'd have to go all the way back to this common ancestor. So evolutionary relationships are able to be illustrated with these tree diagrams, this tree of life that showed ancestors and their descendants. And species with more similarities will share a common ancestor more recently. Okay, we're going to pick up with this on the last video for this chapter. So I will see you soon in a little bit.